All right. Hello.
All right. I'm here with Peter Stokes. He was my coordinating teacher in this project. We were working with seniors in the honors writing class.
Yes, concurrent enrollment class through Arapahoe Community College.
This class was near the end of school, so there were some students that didn't want to work quite as hard as others.
Yes.
But for the most part, they did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I think so. The one big issue was time constraints, because as the calendar, the end of the year was coming in, people had a lot of different obligations. So that's a big thing for next time around, is figuring out this calendar better.
Perfect. So let's talk about some goals. When we first talked about this unit, it was actually before spring break. We got back from spring break, and we wanted to move forward with our project. Let's talk about some of the standards, some of the way in which we designed this unit.
Okay. Well, it was a unit where they were getting some direct instruction on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, giving them some background on the history of it. And it's a writing class, so the primary artifact they were creating was a persuasive writing piece. And the prompt was, how can the U.S. best facilitate peace in the Middle East? Kind of a broad prompt. My goal was less about content and more about the skills, and then presenting a good, coherent, persuasive argument about what the U.S. should do. And some of the issues I already alluded to was the time frame. They needed probably a little more time for direct instruction, to have them be more clear about the details and the facts behind the actual conflict. And then I really think also would have been helpful if I'd slowed down more and had more of a structured writing time, because since we were kind of cramped for time, it was 3 days, go, 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 go. And I think if next time when I do this, I'll stretch it out more, where we're doing, okay, introductory paragraphs today, right, or break it down a little bit more for them.
And what did you want them to be able to walk away with?
Primarily, a little better understanding of geopolitics and the Middle Eastern issues, but mostly about what are the elements of a good persuasive argument. We've been talking about a lot about it throughout the year. So this was, I was hoping they would just intuitively go into, here's background and context, here's some of the, here's what I'm hoping the U.S. should do, here's the obstacles or complications. So I was kind of hoping they could create a good, strong, persuasive argument that was well thought out and structured. And they're better at it. I wouldn't call them, advanced or totally proficient yet, but getting there. That was the big goal.
How will you know if you are successful with the students? And maybe we could talk about, we looked at the Common Core standards, we unpacked those. They were standards that the district had already highlighted for 12th grade, is that correct?
Right.
So using those standards, what would you have, what kind of criteria, I guess, would you have used off of those standards to show success in the students? How would you impact them?
I guess probably the elements of a strong persuasive argument, in terms of a clearly stated thesis, some background or context of the argument as to why it matters, using some different kinds of techniques to be persuasive, appealing to emotion as well as intellect and reason, would be some of the big ones. And then the other piece they've been struggling with all year is just tying things up into a nice conclusion, having a strong conclusion where they kind of wrap it all up and sum up nicely, because they still struggle with that. So those would have been the pieces I really wanted to focus on, was the discrete elements of the persuasive argument.
Now, when we started working with the kids, we gave them two pre-assessments. One was on content, which they didn't know much about at all, and the other was
didn't know anything about.
Yeah, the other was a district writing.
District writing prompt.
Maybe you could talk about that.
Okay, yeah, the district writing prompt was also another form. It was a different prompt, but I can't recall what it was off the top of my head. But it was another persuasive writing piece where they had to have an opinion and defend it, right? And while the prompt wasn't quite as engaging as the Middle East was for the kids, surprise, surprise, they do have the basic structure of, here's my thesis, here's why this matters, here's the reasons behind it. So they understand it, they just, maybe it was the nature of the district writing prompt, they weren't terribly inspired in the pre-assessment.
And then you went through and mark that with a rubric,
Mm-hmm.
with interreliability with the other teachers.
With the other teachers, and then we gave it back to the kids, and we talked about the rubric and talked about the comments.
And from that, we were able to choose 5 students to be able to work with for
Right.
this unit. When they started working, what kind of strategies did we come up with? I think some of them were the peer editing.
Right.
Also,
So we did a lot of peer editing. We've done a handful of group stuff where we looked at drafts that the kids had done.
exemplars.
Thank you, exemplars, and discussed what was the strong part about this exemplar, what was something they could focus on to help give the kids ideas of ways to go with their drafts. And they thought that was kind of helpful. And then we also did, just to get content out there, we did the jigsaw method with them when I gave them a bunch of articles and they jigsawed them and shared out, which again would have been better if I had more time for that, I think. Could have spent more time on the details. And then a lot of just one-on-one anecdotal, like writing conferences. As the kids are writing, you and I both were going around looking over their shoulders and talking with them about it, just kind of give them feedback. Those are the big ones.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting, the kids, all of them asked for comments on their paper, and they said the comments help us the most to change or,
Right.
make the writing better. And I think that was very insightful on their part to ask for that.
And it makes me realize we need to get better rubrics
Yeah.
that are a little more kid-friendly so that
Yeah.
kids can use them more.
What was the most important for you when you were paying attention to yourself during this whole process?
Trying to be clear with them on my goal, and that I wanted the kids to be very clear about what the task was and why they were doing it. And it was less about how do we solve the Middle East and more about how do we write a good persuasive argument that's going to be formal in tone and have credibility. So that was my biggest piece that I was really concerned is too strong a word, that I was hopeful for the kids to be very focused and professional and have the right tone and the strong arguments presented. That was my biggest concern.
Yeah. When I approached you about this and talked to you about this, I had not done very much backward design.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I came to you and we started working on the standards and then we started doing our backward design, that was kind of eye-opening for me because I think that it helped me understand the process of this backward design and how much more clear it can be once you get going with the standards.
Yeah.
And I felt that that was very helpful.
It really is.
And especially when we got down to post-assessment, which is the writing for the kids.
Well, yeah, the only thing I think about backward design, I really like it, except until you've actually taught something once, it's so hard to do.
Yeah.
Because you don't know where you're supposed to end up, or it's not as clear to you.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
As you reflect on this conversation, how has it supported your learning?
Just kind of solidifies that we really do need to be putting in a serious level of thought and effort and preparation into these units and be thinking about what are my goals, what do we want the kids to get out of it. Because just having our conversations and then you got me fired up to think more about it and find some more resources. That part that collegiality, the interaction is what really gets me going. If I had been doing this in a vacuum all by myself, I don't know that I would have done as much reflecting or thinking about it as this process has caused me to do. So we need more of this.
Perfect.
I guess.
That sounds good.
All right, man. Thank you.
You betcha.
Take care.